Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Beneath the Surface, an A&G Concrete Pools podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke Hannon, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Will Armstead, CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of St. Lucie County. How are you doing today, Will?
Luke, I am doing awesome. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you here. Obviously, we've had a relationship. You've had a relationship with A&G for much longer than you've known me, but it's great to be able to have you on the show and kind of dive into all that you do yourself in the Boys and Girls Clubs, but also how the clubs are impacting the children, the youth of St. Lucie County. So I'm excited to get into that. I think a great place to begin, though, for those who don't know you, for those who are just being introduced, what's your story when it comes to how you first got involved with the Boys and Girls Club? Because it's not an organization that you just happen upon, I imagine.
You know, that's a really great question. I got introduced to the Boys and Girls Clubs almost 20 years ago. One of the board members took me out to lunch and said, "What would you think about being on the board of directors?" And so without hesitation, I said, "Let's have lunch and let's talk about it." And I've been a part of Boys and Girls Clubs ever since.
So when you start on the board, what was the first thing that you came in and maybe you had, I think we all have a basic understanding of how Boys and Girls Clubs work, but seeing it up so close, seeing the decision-making process, what was the first thing that jumped out to you?
I think the first thing that jumped out to me being on the board was understanding how the organization is funded, what kids they serve, you know, just the overall, what do they do in the community outside of what you hear? And, you know, we make sure kids are in safe spaces. You know, that's without a given. You know, we make sure we help them with homework. That's what I had known Boys and Girls Clubs to be. I didn't think about all of the other elements of being, you know, a large youth development agency in St. Lucie County and from a national standpoint.
Now, with 2 decades, so much has changed. And not only in the world at large and kind of everything involved with the scholastic system, I'm sure you guys as well, but specifically in St. Lucie County and the Treasure Coast, so much growth, so much development. What is the biggest jump you've seen from that first board meeting that you sit in on to where you are now as CEO?
You know, when I look at the opportunity that I had to sit on a board, so I knew from a strategy standpoint what the board was looking at, the type of growth that they were looking for, and then taking on the role as CEO, I actually have the best job because I got to implement what the board wanted to see happen in St. Lucie County.
What initiatives do you remember being excited about when you first kind of got to that CEO level? Was there something where you had heard the board talking about it, you finally get the chance to kind of be their representation on an implementation side and say, hey, this is something we want to roll out right away. This is important to the kids?
One of the things that was so important to the board at that time was to serve more kids in underserved communities, but also to look at all kids equally. So whether if they were in an underserved neighborhood or whether if they were in a school program, we wanted to make sure that we were serving more kids with quality programs and made sure that the staff that were working for us, that they were at a level that we could see growth for our community as a whole.
Let's talk about that staff because you have an incredible team that works alongside you. How important is it to have those individuals where obviously you're kind of the figurehead, you're everyone's first line of sight when they get introduced to the Boys and Girls Club, but all those people behind the scenes who are making all these initiatives and all these programs happen, how is it important to build out that team in the way that you have?
So when I look at Boys and Girls Clubs, you know, you just said it, right? You have that person. It's like Will Armstead, he's Boys and Girls Clubs. But the truth of the matter is that there's 264 leaders in our organization, right? Like everyone's leading at the role that they play. So whether if you're a program specialist and you are working with the young people directly, or whether if you're a club director where you're overseeing that club at one of our 29 locations, you have ownership to something. I actually get to support them. I actually get to make sure that I'm giving them the resources in order to be the best leader they could be based on their position. And one of the most exciting things for me is to still have a board of directors that support growth and our staff, because without the staff you can't go anywhere. And so to an earlier question you asked, that excites me the most, is because you can't grow your community, you can't offer young people opportunities if your staff is not or isn't or have the ability to do it. And so training is so important for us. We train and develop staff professionally and then in their job site, in their particular jobs.
Have you seen individuals go from what I imagine is a more introductory role with the Boys and Girls Club, maybe something that is really boots on the ground, really individualized, and then alongside you over the past 2 decades kind of grown into a more senior position, and now you see them and you remember where they were at the beginning and all that they're doing, and you look back and say, that's kind of the case study. That's what we want to be able to replicate with everyone we bring through the doors on the team side.
When I look at staff, when we bring them in, I'm always looking at 2 levels later. Not necessarily that, they're program specialists, they're on the ground, they're working with the kids every day. I'm looking for staff that could do more. Many of our staff are college students. They are, they're stay-at-home moms that need a job, or stay-at-home dads for that matter, right? But we're looking for people who want to grow. And so when I look at my team, almost every person that's in a leadership position has grown into that position. So I start internally with all promotions. And then if there's a position that may need an outside person, and some positions do require that, but the vast majority of positions require just people being able to learn and grow into a position.
You bring up a great point there, which is the need for an occasional outside perspective. How important is that with a team that you develop that's so in it every day and that is so dialed into the minutia of all that you have going on, to bring in kind of a fresh set of eyes from maybe a different industry or a different background entirely, to just take a look at it from a bird's eye view and see their perspective on things?
We are in 20 St. Lucie Public Schools, 20 locations in St. Lucie Public Schools. And one of the things that we recognize is if we really want to come alongside the community and we want to help grow young people, we needed to bring in people who had an education background. And so, for Boys and Girls Clubs, of our 264 employees, more than 40 of them are educators from St. Lucie Public Schools. And so in those instances, we have folks that can teach ELA, they can teach English, they can teach science, math, social studies. And so having that allows our staff who may not come from an education background to get an opportunity to learn it from those educators, but also getting educated themselves.
No, this is a great point, because I think it is one of those items that maybe isn't top of mind for everyone when they think of the Boys and Girls Club. We all think of, like you mentioned, that safe space, that environment for them to just be kids and to play and enjoy one another's company and fraternize and socialize and all those wonderful things. But the education side, I mean, obviously a massive kind of jump recently with St. Lucie Public Schools getting to their A rating, having that as kind of a pin on their chest to be able to say, hey, public schools are doing well, they're educating at a high level, they're graduating at a high level, all the things we would hope for from our community. How important is your work in supplementing that and making sure that kind of no student gets left behind if something's challenging them in a particular subject or a course?
So one of the things that Boys and Girls Clubs locally and nationally focus on is making sure that homework help is available. And so our alignment with St. Lucie County is second to none, because we ensure that what they're learning in school, that we're doing it in an enrichment way after school. So when you look at STEM activities or STEAM activities, depends if you want to add the arts to it, we're giving kids an opportunity to learn math in so many ways, to learn engineering design, to learn things in a way that is more hands-on, than the practical way you have to do it in school. And so our relationship with St. Lucie Public Schools allows us to know what's being done and how we could best assist our young people. Adding to that, we work with Children's Services Council, which the expectation is that the kids have to, or the teenagers have to either maintain or increase their grades in order to get that grant. And many of our grantors or funders, even donors like A&G Concrete Pools, they have an expectation that kids are doing better. And so in order for them to do better, we have to align ourselves with St. Lucie Public Schools and figure out what do kids need and how do we get them there. And so we have so many tools. We've created a team within our team of under a leadership that allows programs to make sure the programs are aligned with what the schools want, but also ensure that the kids are having a good time while they're at the clubs.
Do you ever find that balance to be difficult of kind of allowing them to escape from the daily life, from school, from thing, and just be themselves and not have to worry about anything, but also still keeping them on that right path of improving their academic success, improving their career opportunities or their collegiate opportunities, whatever path they end up choosing?
Boys and Girls Clubs of St. Lucie County has an opportunity probably like no other. We get to allow the schools to do what they do, and they do a great job. As you stated, they're an A-rated school. We get to come alongside the school and as a partner, a collaborator, to keep the enrichment going, keep them excited about maybe that math problem that they were struggling with, and we were able to show it from a different angle. And now the kids, the light bulb went off. Like, that makes sense now. That's how we can get that done. That's how we can get that answer. And having educators on staff makes a huge difference, because we preach this. We do not want the kids to feel like they are in a school environment. We want them to have fun. But we also want the educators to be creative. And, they have rules that they have to follow in terms of what they are teaching and how they are teaching the kids. Whereas when they come to the Boys and Girls Clubs, there are things that they may be able to use their own creativity to get the same result.
Do you find that to be one of the great advantages of the Boys and Girls Club, that there isn't kind of the same restriction? Even though you're working towards the same goal, you really can go outside the box with the approach. So if a student's maybe more of a visual learner or maybe of an auditory learner, and there's something beyond the standard reading of the textbook, you guys have more freedom to explore on a one-on-one basis and say, hey, this is the best way for you to learn. Let's approach it this way so you can take that success with you going forward.
That's a great, what makes that question so great is because we've experienced this in our business partnerships. A&G Concrete Pools and Boys and Girls Clubs have collaborated on many of occasions that benefited kids in an enrichment way. We would come to the warehouse of A&G Concrete Pools, and kids would learn the different elements that you all do in building a pool, right? A lot of math involved in that process, right? A lot of angles, and there's a lot of strategic thinking when it comes to that, when it comes to building a pool, right? In the design phase. And so when we partner with the business community, it allows us to give kids not only an opportunity to see what's out there, but also to learn in a different environment. So we utilize A&G Concrete Pools and other businesses to be able to give kids that enrichment that maybe the schools couldn't give them because of the rigor that they have to do within the education system.
On the topic of A&G, and obviously we're sitting here in the studio, and it's a partnership that's been ongoing for many years now, and I'm curious, what was your first interaction with Travis? Obviously now he's the sole owner. He himself is attending a lot of these events. Obviously he's funding them, but he's putting his time in as well, and I think that impact is really felt. Take me back to when you first met him and sort of what you immediately thought, what your first impressions were, and how that relationship grew.
So I wish that I could say I was the first one to introduce him to Boys and Girls Clubs, and I was not. There was a person who ended up being my chief operating officer, Melanie Wiles, who introduced me to Travis and all the work that he had done. And, when you think about, 10, 11, 12 years ago, a business giving $10,000, that's a lot of money for any business to give. And when you think about, they make money by selling pools, right? Which is awesome to do, but you got to sell pools. And, I respect anyone, any business that are willing to give us some of their profits. It's a big deal to me. And I met Travis through our Youth of the Year program. Travis was one of our lead judges. He was the lead judge 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And he's been the lead judge ever since. Yeah. And so that's my first introduction to Travis. And I knew then that I needed to get to know him a little bit more because I could see the passion in him for the community, not just Boys and Girls Clubs, but his overall compassion. And a person like me, although I've had a lot of different experiences, compassion is one of my strong suits. I really care about the community. I care about the youth that we serve. I care about our staff. But I saw some of those same passions. I've had extensive conversations with Travis and realized this guy's the real deal. He really wants to do a lot for his community. And in some cases, I think he does too much for so many. But that's passion. You could never do a lot too much, So when in meeting him, I knew that this was someone who was going to be a continued partner, and the amount of work he would put into our Youth of the Year kids, and we benefited from his leadership. 2 years in a row, we had the state Youth of the Year winner. And part of that was he had an expectation that we weren't just going to run the kids through the program, but that we were going to be diligent and that we were going to make sure that the kids were prepared for the state competition, the local competition. We could celebrate, but we would also make sure that these kids are young people were going to be successful no matter what they did. And he put a lot of time, and because of that, we were able to see others that got involved, that stayed involved, like the Mets, and we saw some of our other friends throughout the community that stayed involved and continue to be involved. So that was really my first interaction, was the fact that this business would give us $10,000, but also this business would have a hands-on approach to our young people.
Tell me about Youth of the Year, because I think that's one of the most amazing things that you guys do. Obviously, it can be taken up to the national level through the Boys and Girls Club, but that is the first interaction, as you mentioned there, and is something that Travis is still involved with every year, and I know it's one of his favorite things to be able to do, because you have these young individuals who are achieving at such a high level. How important do you think it is to give them their spotlight and say, tell your story, let's see if it makes sense for us, and go represent us at a larger level? So not only can we show people what we're doing here in St. Lucie County with the Boys and Girls Clubs and with the local business partnerships, but at the same time showing those kids all that they can achieve and all that's out there for them, even beyond the county lines.
When I look at the kids and I keep saying kids, so I need to fix that. When I look at the young people, these teenagers, it's not necessarily just about them telling a story, right? Storytelling is great. It's about them learning and achieving something big for the future and be the leaders of tomorrow. These young people have to write resumes. They have to get or receive recommendations. There is an opportunity for them to prepare a speech of their life and what has, got them to the place that they may be at in that particular point in their life. But it really helps them with public speaking. It helps them to be able to be in a room of 200 to 300 adults staring at them while they are sharing some of their deepest moments in their life. And sometimes those moments are so uncomfortable, but our staff that are trained have the ability to walk them through. And we bring in professionals and business folks that walk them through and train them and coach them and prepare them for the next level of, at the state, go to regionals, go to the national competition. But bigger than all that, we're changing these young people's lives because they get to use that when they go on their job interviews. When they're looking at colleges, they're able to ask the questions versus just the questions being asked of them. They're able to have the confidence and the wherewithal to know what they want to do versus someone telling them what they should do. And so I've seen in my time, many of the Youth of the Year candidates, the ones that won, the ones that participated, become big things in my short, nearly 20 years, to being, to going to college and being the top of their class, to becoming pharmacists, to getting into the political arena, to become business owners, to own homes and buy cars and start raising families or working jobs. So it's always nice to see the result that they're being productive citizens.
Now, you mentioned there, and I find it so funny that you term it as a short 20 years when so many individuals you've impacted in that time. I imagine you have countless stories about this, but is there any one or two that stand out to you of someone who was a club kid when you first started and went through that program, maybe was Youth of the Year, maybe wasn't, but now you see them as an adult with a family or as in their kind of professional arena? Is there anything that comes to mind for you of like, that's the success, that's why we do this, that's why we get up every day and kind of try and elevate these kids to the next level?
Yeah, I have examples of many examples of people who are now adults and just doing some phenomenal things. But what I have is in the current people that I've watched from kindergarten or fifth grade, and now they're 11th graders and seniors in high school, and I've watched them develop over the years. We take very serious our foster care community, and we've had the opportunity to make sure that every kid has a safe space. And when it comes to foster care, that's something that's near and dear to my heart personally. And we have a young lady who I watched her when she was young, just being tossed around in the system. And granted, there were a lot of great people there to help her and to be a part of her life. But one of my staff members adopted her and her sister. And it touched me that this staff member made that decision to adopt these two young ladies. And today, this young lady is now, she was in our workforce program, and I talked to her, and she said she wanted to be an accountant. And this was a young lady who did not talk. She didn't really interact. And when she interacted with people, it wasn't always in a positive way. So to see that and to have her be part of our workforce program this past summer, and to see her on camera, local news, and talking about why Boys and Girls Clubs had an impact on her, or why she wants to be an accountant. And then I just found out recently she won the Youth of the Year for her club. Mm-hmm. That's the impact that we have on our kids. And the impact is that we don't give up. We don't back down on any kid. we don't know their circumstances most of the time. So we keep pushing, we keep pushing. We don't become their parents, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunts. We come alongside their families and we give that safe space for them. And when I see those kind of stories, when I witness those things, that makes me get up the next day and want to do it again.
Yeah, it's amazing work that you guys do. Let's talk about that workforce program, though, because I know it's one of the things that we kind of directly fund in a more annual basis. It's one of the biggest high impact programs that you have. I think particularly when we had Tom Jones on the show, we talked at length about where St. Lucie County is now and kind of the precipice we're at of. There's a real opportunity if we can find a way to reinvest our young people, reinvest those who are going out and getting college educated, have them come back and impact local businesses or even start their own businesses and create change locally. That's how we'll kind of get to the next evolution of the community. I think a lot of ways that starts with what you're doing with that workforce program. So for those who don't know, what is that program? How is it affecting our youth and sort of where do they go from that program to the next stage?
At Boys and Girls Clubs, it's easy when the kids are, let's say, between the ages of 6 and 11 or 12 to keep them in the clubs because their parents say, you're going to the Boys and Girls Clubs. And our STEM activities are all related to what the future is going to be for those kids. So, we have a lot of 6 and 7-year-olds that we have what we call as a Charlie cart, and it's a program where kids get to actually, with a curriculum, learn everything about food service. And so most people, at least in my era, I think it's probably pretty close today, start in food service somehow, whether they're working at a Burger King, or McDonald's, or Starbucks, or wherever they work. They work somewhere in the food industry, hospitality industry. And so as early as 6, we are giving kids opportunities to learn about something in a segment of society in the workforce area. And so when we look at that and we look at all of our STEM activities that we provide kids that allow them to be creative and figure out how do you match that STEM activity to an A&G Concrete Pools. Oh, they do that. They design. There's some science to what they do. And so we do a great job at that. And then when they get around middle school, then sometimes we lose them. And so over the last 5 or 6 years, we've taken a stance on that. We're not going to lose these young people. We're going to create a workforce program with all the activities that we had shared with them over the years. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give them some practical experience out in the real world. And so we, with the help of many of our friends, to include A&G Concrete Pools, we purchased a food truck. And that food truck allowed kids to actually go out and be in the public's eye. And now they could serve food, do some customer service, see what the cooking is like, see what it's like interacting with humans on the other side. Some math with money, collecting money and giving change back, and all those things that come in the retail space or the food industry space. And then we said, we're going to take this to another level. We're going to find jobs for every teenager that works for us. So the jobs may, they may be responsible for picking up trash. They may be responsible for filing. They may be responsible for working with me in my office, in HR, and other places. And we've now decided that we're going to take it to another level. And we have built ourselves up in a way that we now partner with Economic Development Council, which allows us, and TCC, which allows us to work with our business industry partners to give these kids real work experience. This last year, we had 51 kids paid internships where they earned $15 an hour to work 27 hours a week. But not only did they just work, they were able to come back every Friday and let's talk about that experience you had at work. They were able to work with many of our coaches, that the coaches got to work with the industry partners, but they also got to work with the kids too, or the teenagers. And it was such a successful community project that we're going to do this again next year. Where A&G Concrete Pools comes in all this is the funding. We could not do this work without some of the funding we receive from A&G Concrete Pools, where we do a lot of great things, right? We have chili cook-offs, we have our gala that's always amazing. We have golf tournaments, we have those things. But that's not the work that we do. That helps fuel what we do and bring the masses of people together to have a good time and for us to share what we do. But it's a lot of the behind the scenes things that we do with that funding that allows us to provide equipment or training programs or staffing to make sure that we're giving our kids every benefit of the doubt as they grow up to be good citizens.
Well, I think we view it on our side as this truly is the next generation that is coming into these local businesses and really affecting change within them. And oftentimes bringing new ideas, that things that we wouldn't have thought of ourselves because we're so in the day-to-day and we're so ingratiated in the way that our process works. And I'm always stunned by it, the savvy with which our youth is able to navigate really the cutting edge, whether that's technology, whether that's AI, whether that's just whatever the next thing around the corner is. It's so intuitive to them now. And I think that perspective is so important to have of someone who understands all this so innately, having them come into those of us who might not have that same kind of level of intuitiveness with it. The issue comes in the fact that often access is required for those kids to really flesh that out and to be able to see that. So for us, and the way that we view it is, if we can help create that access, and whether that is the opportunity to have a real internship and gain real work experience at an age that most wouldn't be able to, or just funding a general program that allows them to see a different part of a business, a different part of the world. Even when I think about somebody like us specifically, and I know I had this experience when I first joined A&G of, you don't think about what goes into the pool. And you've already mentioned a few things, of the math, the sciences, the engineering, the design. It really is this holistic kind of business where someone with an art background has value, someone with a STEM background has value, someone who's a systems engineer can understand how to put together a construction process. All those things are so incredibly important to what we do. And to be able to turn around and inspire our youth to say, it's all out there for you. It's all at the palm of your hands. You just have to be given that first kind of door opening. If we can open that door, I think it's something we'll do time and time again.
You know, Luke, you make a great point, access. And one of the things that I pride myself on is ensuring that kids have access. So my background is I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, tough neighborhood, and just where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of access to some of the things that I didn't learn until it was later on in my life. I joined the military. That's where I started getting access to things that I had no idea was around me. And the military gave me an opportunity to look at life a little bit differently from a discipline standpoint. And I am a very disciplined person when it comes to ensuring that the next generation get what they need. And access is so important. While it worked for me, because now I have access, right? I have access to people. I have access to you. I have access to Travis and his team. I want to make sure that I give our young people access. Any opportunity that I have to bring a young person to come and meet Travis or any one of his teammates or meet the representative or a commissioner, that's my job, is to make sure that I'm putting them at tables that they otherwise would not have the opportunity. And that is what makes A&G Concrete Pools so good at what they do, because they not only support what we do at Boys and Girls Clubs, but they support so many other organizations, whether if it's UP, making sure those places have, food insecurities, making sure that they are attaching and aligning themselves with those things. The Education Foundation, many of the things that you all fund all really help with the access to our kids, and so, or teenagers, and that's so important to me, is to make sure that kids are given that, teenagers are given that, and then that we're following through on it, and not having this expectation that I give them access one time, they automatically are going to know the efficacy of whatever it may be, but that repetition is what's going to make them better, or get them to understand, oh, that's, at A&G Concrete Pools, not only do you have the guys that are out, working hard building the pools, you have people behind the scenes that are designing the pools. Oh, and you have people that are selling the pools, and you have accountants that are keeping up with the money, and you have, people at the front desk, and you have Luke that's out telling the story, right? So there's so many elements of every business, and the job and the role that I get to play is ensuring that every kid get access to every business, every opportunity that's out there.
And I think that's one of the reasons why this partnership between A&G and the Boys and Girls Club has stood the test of time and has gone on and will continue to go on, is you have that foresight beyond just that immediate moment, that one-time experience. Because your point is spot on. If you were in any corporate setting, if you were any workforce training, if you were in the military, they don't show it to you one time and expect you've understood it for the remainder of your life and you'll be perfect at it from here on out. It's a growth. It's a process that takes time, and it's different for everyone. So being able to create that access, not one singular time, but holistically, and being able to say, you can come back to it again tomorrow. We can try this again. We can find a new path. We can figure out what makes sense for you, what resonates with you, so that they, in turn, can go out and affect the world in a real way and not feel as though they missed out on an opportunity in some fashion. Because I do think that comes with so much pressure for particularly a young person to say, hey, this is your moment. We're bringing you to A&G. You're going to meet with the owner. You're going to have this conversation. And if it doesn't go right, I know certainly when I was younger, when things don't go your way, you feel like the world ends. And you're like, I'm never going to get that chance again. And for you guys to be able to reopen those doors and show people, no, it's all right. You're learning. It takes time. None of it was built in a day. I think it's an amazing thing you do, and you always have that foresight of, we're trying to affect now, we're trying to affect the individuals now, but doing so for the future and not being prisoners of the moment in any way.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of all of the myths out there, when you look at nonprofits. Having served this country, I've had the opportunity and pleasure to be a part of 2 conflicts. Having worked in a corporate environment and now in the nonprofit space, what I could tell you, nonprofits work hard. A lot of times nonprofits don't have access to capital. They don't have access to some of the things that the corporate world has, that the military has. They have to fight for every dollar that they get. And we are reliant on donations. We're relying on some funding from the government. We're relying on a number of different funding sources. What I like about A&G Concrete Pools and our community, I have to say that, is that you guys realize that when you see success, you don't stop funding the nonprofit. You don't stop funding them to go to the next shiny nickel that's out there. Our success is based on continual support of what has worked. And it's never about me, the CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs, because I could be replaced at any given time. It's about the youth that we serve and the results that we are producing. And every business that gives to Boys and Girls Clubs should keep in mind that those are going to be your future employees.
Yeah.
Those are going to be your future doctors and lawyers and developers, people that are going to be coming in your homes, people that are going to be serving you in your restaurants and building your pools. And so when I look at the nonprofit space, especially at Boys and Girls Clubs, there are a lot of charitable things that we do. We make sure kids eat. We serve 1 million meals and snacks and some of our food pantries annually. We, if kids need clothing or they need other things, we ensure that they get those things. But preparing kids for the workforce is not charitable. That's real work experience. The work that we do in STEM activities, the professionals that we have at our locations, many of them have masters and bachelor's degrees, or working on their degree to be better stewards, to make sure that not only are we preparing what's happening today, but we're preparing for the future. I appreciate A&G Concrete Pools because they get that. And over the years, we've received, vehicles from A&G Concrete Pools. We started out at $10,000, but we don't get $10,000 now. We actually get $50,000 now. $50,000. That's a lot of money. Yeah. That's a lot of money for any business to give to anyone, and we respect it. But I would say to Travis and any other business, look at the results. Look at the result of your labor. When I think about the gentleman that is building a pool, like, I could applaud that guy or those guys and girls that are working hard. And I thank every one of his employees because, if his employees didn't do what they did or do, we would never be able to get that money. So it takes a complete community to make these things happen. But to the point of the nonprofit, Boys and Girls Clubs is a strong nonprofit in our community. And we are helping the next generation of young people, thousands at a time, every single year. And I always want to make that point because it's important for the community to know is that what happens if you don't have a Boys and Girls Clubs, a safe space after school for kids. We believe that we help reduce crime in neighborhoods because the kids have a safe space. We believe that we help increase grade point averages for kids because they have a safe space. We believe that kids are getting jobs and are going to college and getting into careers and raising families because they have a safe space at Boys and Girls Clubs. So we're more than just a charity. We do some charitable things, but some of the other things we do are life skills for the future of our young people.
It's amazing work that you guys do. And I know I can say this with full confidence on behalf of the entire team, on behalf of Travis, that we thank you so deeply, not for just what you do and the impact that you make with our sponsorships and those sort of things, but the way that this truly has become kind of your life project and the way that you've taken it to where there's no time that you won't answer the phone and there's no event that you won't attend. And you always have time for individuals, whether that's someone like Travis or even someone like me, to make the time to share all that you have going on. and all that the impact that you guys have in the community. And for those who may not be as familiar, or maybe we're on the fence, I could not encourage them enough. Knowing you, knowing your team, give the Boys and Girls Club the opportunity, because I think the impact that you guys make is just astounding.
Well, I appreciate that, Luke. Thank you for having me today to be able to share my personal passion, but the passion of all 264 employees that we have. You cannot work for me if you don't have passion for youth. You have to love what you do. And I'm proud to say that I have 264 employees that love what they do.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today and for my conversation with Will. It's so great to have him here. The Boys and Girls Club is one of our longest standing philanthropic partners, and the work that they do is truly incredible. So we encourage you to find your local Boys and Girls Club. If you're in a position to support, we could not ask you enough to make those donations, attend the events, attend the chili cook-off, and see all that they're doing in our community, because it's truly exceptional. If you'd like to watch any of our previous episodes, you can find those on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next time.